Okay, we will get going then. Have a lot to cover today, though just in two parts. One is to welcome back our one of our favorite speakers from Washington, D.C., and that's Ehren Dohler from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities to tell us what's happening related to the federal budget, housing line items, obviously. I see that there is some movement in the Senate. Not sure what's happening in the House, and maybe this year they'll actually get it done on time. I don't know. I'm putting that out as a question. It seems to me that rather than punting till after the election, both parties are sort of getting freaked out about the possibilities for this election. So I'll turn it over to you, Ehren. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Right, things are moving. Let me start with that sort of broad, on a high level, what's happening. So the Senate THUD appropriations bill is actually being debated on the floor right now. That was the bill that passed out of committee on a bipartisan basis 2 weeks ago, I think. And it's packaged with the military construction VA appropriations bill and will probably be the vehicle, or at least possibly be the vehicle on which some emergency funding to address the Zika virus will ride. So it's a little package there, which probably bodes well for the chances of the THUD bill moving somewhere this year, maybe, in that if it continues to be packaged with these other priorities, Zika and military construction and VA, that enjoy broader support, then it could that could bode well for, as you said, Cindy, maybe a THUD bill actually reaching the president's desk this year, although that still remains relatively unlikely. But if it were to happen, it would probably be because of what it was riding with. Of course, a lot of that also depends on what the House does. The House is behind the Senate this year, unlike most years, because they had trouble passing a budget resolution, which they haven't done. And so some House rules prevent them from bringing appropriations bills to the floor until a certain date, which is May 15th, without a budget resolution. But now we can start moving. So the THUD bill, we hear, will have a markup in subcommittee tomorrow. It's possible the subcommittee markups are sort of pro forma. The chair and ranking member just say some things about the bill generally, and then they just vote it out of subcommittee. The full committee is where the fireworks happen. If there are amendments or other debate, that's where all of that happens. They hold all of that until the full committee markup. And so the full committee markup, we hear, will be on the 24th, so next Tuesday. We really have no idea what the House bill will look like. The only rumors we've heard is that, it on the sort of big ticket items, it'll look sort of like the Senate's, but we really don't know more than that. The subcommittee markup sometimes gives us an opportunity to get our hands on the bill, or at least get a little information about what's in it, but we usually don't see full text of the bill until the full committee markup next week. So that's process. That's where we are in the process. So if the House, assuming the House passes their bill out of the full committee, which they will, then it will go to the House floor, maybe sometime pretty soon, the next couple of weeks after that, and then we don't know. The risk of all of this is that appropriations bills always have the risk of having amendments attached to them that kill the bill for one reason or another. We don't know. We'll see what happens. So and then let's see. I'm going to stay high level on sort of how these bills will move. As I said, amendments are going to be a main barrier possibly to moving the bill in either the House or the Senate. There one of the main the transportation HUD main barriers in the Senate is attached to Zika. People care a lot about that, assuming that Democrats and Republicans can come to an agreement on what that Zika package looks like. Then that should pass because everyone wants it to pass. But there's always a chance that those things would break down. But on the housing side in particular, there's one amendment that might throw a monkey wrench in things that prevents HUD from using funding to implement the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule. Democrats are generally against that, so if they feel that that has a chance of passing, they could block it, but it seems that they won't because they passed some amendments yesterday with no problem, and they held this one till later. So it seems that maybe they're trying to figure it out and holding it to the end, but that's all conjecture. So we'll see. There could be other amendments that come up. The more controversial amendments, honestly, seem to be on the transportation side of things. There's some stuff about trucking rules that seem to be relatively controversial. So all of that is to say that it seems that the bill is moving well. It was bipartisan. It was passed out of committee on a bipartisan basis, but anything could happen as floor debate continues, and the same is on the House. So that's where we are big picture. So we may see passed bills out of both chambers or one chamber or none, depending on how things go. Now, since we do have a bill that we've seen the full text of, let me dig in a little bit to the Senate bill, and then I can maybe conjecture on what the House bill will have, but we don't really know. So we were worried, and you may have heard we were worried, that the Senate bill would look very bad because of the initial allocation we saw for the bill. That ended up being an unfounded fear because they used a little budget magic to rescind some funds from the transportation side of things that were never going to be spent and dedicate them to transportation HUD. It's called a CHIMP, a change in mandatory programs. This happens a lot. They're sort of they're honestly gimmicks, but they give you some wiggle room under these budget caps. So the Senate bill looks pretty good, honestly. I mean, it doesn't do everything that the president's budget does, which is unsurprising. The Republicans wouldn't just take the president's budget verbatim, but it does some things, and generally it funds most programs at least the same level as last year, and many programs got pretty sizable increases compared to recent years. So the main rental assistance programs were fully renewed, Section 8 vouchers and project-based rental assistance. At least we think vouchers, you never really know until later on the year exactly how much you need to renew, but the number generally looks good. They even, they put some extra money into vouchers for some new VASH vouchers. They also put $20 million for new FUP, Family Unification Program vouchers, so that's some new rental assistance that, of course, is desperately needed. Not a lot, but some. Public housing also got small increases, but given how public housing has been hit in many recent years, that's very welcome. And so other main programs, McKinney-Vento got some increases as well, homeless assistance, not to the level that the president requested, but still some welcome increases, including $40 million more in additional youth funding. You might remember that there was $25 million in last year's appropriations bill, so another $40 million for youth. That seems to be a priority for homeless youth, priority of Senator Collins. Home was funded at $950 million, which is flat funding compared to last year, so no big home cuts like we remember from last year. CDBG also flat funded from last year, so no cuts there. So overall, some targeted increases in some specific priorities from the committee, and everything else sort of got what it needed to stay level, either to renew all rental assistance or just flat funding from last year. So given where we started, that's overall pretty good, and so, I mean, I think we're hopeful that the bill will pass. So I think I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you, Ehren. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. If you've muted your phone, you can use the *7 to unmute. Does anyone have questions for Ehren?
Hey, Ehren, it's Joyce. I feel like I always ask this question, but your thoughts from being down there, what we should be doing in terms of advocacy with our reps and senators.
Yeah, so I don't think anything groundbreaking. You could be calling your senators right now and try to urge them to pass the THUD bill without, big controversial amendments. There are some amendments that have already passed that are non-controversial and probably pretty good, and that's okay. Small amendments here and there is fine. But if there's big controversial amendments, emphasizing that getting a bill is important, and we shouldn't be fighting over big things that might kill it. So that could be something to do with the Senate, and that would be very quick, like now, because it's not where they're on the Senate floor right now. And then in the House, there still could be time to affect what's in the bill itself. So between now and tomorrow, really. So calling about what's in the bill itself could be helpful, but also there's sort of a follow-on strategy is depending on what's in the bill. Democrats may offer amendments to increase certain items if they aren't to their liking. So now those amendments won't pass. They'll be mostly to just sort of make a point that X program needs more money. But nonetheless, that could be helpful in just sort of making that point. But we won't really know what might need to be amended until the subcommittee markup, until they've all seen the bill. So I guess from that side of things, in general, talking to Democrats, especially about your priorities, might sort of point them to look at what's in the bill when they see it tomorrow, and decide if they want to do anything in the full committee markup. So it's certainly not. It's certainly still useful to talk to members of Congress. Although I'll say that I think at this point things are moving pretty fast.
Ehren, this is Cindy. Following up on that, so I understand about the Democrats don't have the power to get amendments through. They do it to make a point. But what about advocacy with the Republicans? How likely is it that once we get to full committee where you said the debate takes place, do the Republicans generally just hang together and support the bill that's been drafted? Is there really an opportunity for some change?
Very little. Yeah, usually they hang together. That isn't to say there isn't opportunity, but it certainly won't be about money, or almost certainly won't be about money, unless it's very small. Maybe it would be about money if it was tweaks here and there, but it would have to be offset. So they would have to take money from somewhere and put it somewhere else, and so that only goes so far. And so it's unlikely unless there was a very small priority that someone wanted to put forward. Policy changes maybe, little tweaks in some, the language here or the language there. Sometimes there's a chance for when the full committee passes the bill, they release a report that accompanies it that sort of explains it in more plain language. Often that report directs HUD to implement a program in X way. It has some, it's not binding per se, but it has some sort of like, this is what we would like to see happen. That is a place where Republicans can get some report language in. If there's something in a way that a program is implemented that you'd like, them to direct HUD to do something, that's sometimes an opportunity. But yeah, in general, at this point, the bill is pretty much written. They're going to mark it up in 24 hours. And then after they have it in subcommittee, it's possible that if all the Republicans in the week after the subcommittee markup, throw up their hands and say absolutely not, this is horrible, then maybe there could be some changes between those two markups, but it's extremely unlikely.
Okay, thanks.
This is Jeff from PA Silk. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any updates on two programs of interest to the disability community? One is the Section 811, and the other one is the funding for fair housing enforcement.
So 811 met the president's request, which was just a small increase compared to 2016. So no large amounts of new units or anything. 154 million.
Excuse me, Ehren. I'm going to remind people to mute their phones with a *6. Thanks.
It may take me a little longer to find fair housing enforcement.
Oh, and one other one I thought of. What about 202 for seniors?
Yeah, so same story there. Met the president's request, which was pretty much just enough to keep things going, with a small increase compared to 2016. So that's 505 million.
So you don't see much changing on those ones?
As in sort of large increases or new units being built or anything like that?
Or just fluctuation either way as the process moves forward?
Oh, I see. No. I'm sure those numbers will stay just about the same.
Okay, and I'll wait to hear on the fair housing. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Dave Lockery with HCC Mid-Atlantic. We had a request that apparently Senator Weinstein would...
I'm sorry. Dave, can you speak up a little? And, again, if anyone else can mute their phone, everyone else would appreciate it. There's a conversation in the background.
And just so you understand,
Sorry. Dave, if you could speak up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. We had a request from Senator Feinstein to have a resolution about with home funds that would allow for some extension beyond 2 years in terms of money that wasn't used that could be held for projects that were being designated for that, especially at the contact Senator Toomey's office. I was just wondering if you knew anything about that resolution.
Yeah. So if those didn't hear, there's still a little noise going on in somebody's phone. This is about an amendment to the Senate THUD bill offered by Senator Feinstein that would allow home funds that haven't been obligated, they normally have to be used within 24 months, allow them. And if they don't, then they sort of just go back to the Treasury. This would allow them to be used past that 24-month deadline. As I understand it, that amendment has passed and is now attached to the bill. It seems that there's nothing more to be done on that, and if you did contact your senator, then that seemed to work well.
Great. I'm going to have to figure out how to mute all lines, and then the speakers can *7 to unmute. Bear with me just a second here. I'm sorry.
but I guess it depends on how you look at it. You look at all these other projects that got funded. Their greater brother could have said, I want to see that. Right. And those are kind of shot down.
Okay, that's not working. All right, I'm going to continue to work on this. So I'm sorry, we'll continue as best we can while I figure out how we can start the lines. So any other questions for Ehren? Okay, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you getting on, Ehren, and we will certainly keep in touch. Obviously, we're very concerned, and we will continue to do our advocacy, I guess, at this point, once we see what comes out. So thanks.
Sure.
And we'll now turn to the state, where we've had some exciting movement, I'd say, on the homelessness front. We haven't solved all the problems yet, but we have a terrific report thanks to the Joint State Government Commission. And Helen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself while I continue to work on this noise problem. If you would, Helen.
Yes, there's a lot of background noise.
Yes.
Hello again, everybody. My name is Ehren Khanzhina. I am a public policy analyst with the Joint State Government Commission, and I was the project manager for the report that we just published about a month ago. In case some of you are not familiar with our agency, the Joint State Government Commission was created in 1937, a lot of years ago, as the primary and central nonpartisan bicameral research and policy development agency for the General Assembly of Pennsylvania. The studies conducted by the Joint State Government Commission are authorized by statute or by a simple or joint resolution. In this case, House Resolution 550 of 2014 directed us to establish a bipartisan legislative task force and an advisory committee to conduct a study of the occurrence, effects, and trends of homelessness in Pennsylvania, and to report its findings and recommendations to the House of Representatives, which is what we did in this report. Some of our studies are staff studies. This one, as you know, was a result of the work of a vast advisory committee. There were over 30 members in this committee, and Cindy and Joyce, by the way, from the Housing Alliance, were very active members, very helpful, so we appreciate their contribution very much. Otherwise, the advisory committee consisted of representatives of several departments, such as the Department of Community and Economic Development, of Human Services, of Education, of Corrections, of Labor and Industry, and others. It also included researchers, housing service providers, county officials, advocates representing diverse homeless populations, community development specialists, and people who have experienced homelessness themselves at some point in their lives. The way the Advisory Committee and the Joint State Government Commission worked was that we held 5 general meetings. We subdivided into 5 subcommittees, and they had regular teleconferences. The process took about 2 years. And both the Advisory Committee members and the Joint State Government Commission performed a lot of research of their own, reading various books and articles and studies and so on, in addition to their discussions. We also tried to obtain direct input from families and individuals throughout the state who have experienced homelessness. So we conducted a survey of people utilizing housing services throughout the Commonwealth, and the survey results and analysis are also presented in the report, and can also be of interest on their own. Now, when we were doing this survey, Christy Teicher was an intern with the Joint State Government Commission, and she did a lot of work on that survey. So the resulting report is over 200 pages. It contains a lot of material on causes and consequences of homelessness. It talks about general causes and general strategies to address them. It also looks specifically at a number of homeless populations, subgroups such as victims of domestic violence, former inmates, mental health, substance use disorders, rural homelessness, veterans, because children and youth take a prominent place in the resolution. There's a long chapter on children and youth experiencing homelessness, specifically their health, their education, specific subgroups such as preschool children and early learning, unaccompanied youth, and specifically lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth who are facing specific problems. And I'm telling you what is included in the report because some of you may be interested in a particular subgroup and may just look at a particular chapter. The report is available online. So before I move on to some main points and to the recommendations that the task force and the advisory committee made, let me give you the website where you can find it in case you want to look at some of it in more detail. It is HTTP and then JSG, J for joint, S for state, G for government. So it's JSG dot legis for legislature dot state dot PA dot US. JSG legis state PA US.
I believe that we linked it in the notice that went out also, so people may be able to find it there. But thank you for giving it up. Go ahead.
Helen?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Couldn't hear you.
Yes. So the main points, it's hard certainly to summarize such an extensive report in a few minutes, but the main points concern various approaches to this issue that the advisory committee believes would be useful, would be working, and there are a variety of them. Some of them really refer to the homeless population in general, and there are some points that we believe are very important to remember, which is first that homelessness is just a symptom. It's the final extreme result of general problems such as poverty and lack of employment opportunities and specific problems for a particular group. So in order to successfully fight homelessness, you need to address these initial issues. We believe that it is very important to pose realistic and varied goals regarding homelessness. It's not just about numbers, it's about recurring homelessness and avoiding recurrence. It's about different kinds of help that particular people may need. For individuals, homelessness is usually a result of a combination of macro, long-term factors and immediate causes, and they both need to be addressed. For example, as far as immediate causes go, it may be eviction or threat of eviction, and very often it's enough to address this issue immediately, and that can prevent a family from becoming homeless. But there are also long-term causes of homelessness, such as unemployment, lack of training programs, lack of education, ongoing domestic violence, continuing problems with people being released from prisons or jails, or drug abuse, and then unable to get back to their normal lives, to housing. These problems need to be addressed long term. The advisory committee believes that a key to the solution of these problems is client-centered approach. which means that people will be treated differently and different kinds of help will be offered dependent on the main causes that brought them to homelessness. At the same time, it is important to realize that there are some underlying causes that have impact on everybody, and a major problem is the problem of housing affordability. We spent a lot of time researching this problem, and unfortunately, an analysis of recent trends leads to an alarming conclusion that housing affordability problems have been continuously worsening, almost continuously worsening for the past 3 decades. The housing bubble collapse in 2007 and the Great Recession are perceived as the leading economic cause of a vast increase in the number of households, both renters and homeowners, with severe housing cost burdens. So expanding the supply of appropriately priced housing, increasing renters' income, and rental assistance are all required to resolve the affordability problem. And it is very big for all populations, really. Some populations seem to be at higher risks, including the growing populations of the elderly, especially in some areas of this country. But studying affordability really shows a frightening picture, for example, indicating that in order to afford an apartment, a person with a minimum wage has to work up to 80 hours a week. That in no county in Pennsylvania a person can afford an apartment if his or her only source of income is SSI or SSDI. This is clearly a major problem. The Advisory Committee and the Task Force strongly believe that prevention should be a priority when we are talking about homelessness. And that partly means what the Australians, by the way, who are doing very well with fighting against homelessness, called shutting the tap, meaning that there should be no feeder systems supplying continuous numbers of people who become homeless. And that regards prisons and jails, the corrections facilities, and Pennsylvania Department of Corrections has been working on this issue, just that more needs to be done. There are also people who are mentally ill and released from mental institutions. There are people who are graduating from foster care without better prospects in the future. At this point, it is very important to intervene early, very early, sometimes before the release, in most cases before the release indeed, or immediately after the person is out. Really, the research shows that the first few hours, let alone the first few days, may be critical. This is called critical time intervention, and this is one of the best practices that is becoming more and more popular and certainly should be utilized. Speaking of children and youth, we should also say that the earlier interventions are taken, the better results are, not only for the individual but for the society in general. In fact, consequences of homelessness are so drastic for young children, both the impacts on their health and their education and their future careers, that the best time to interfere is to help pregnant women who are at risk for homelessness. Help them so that they and their future children never become homeless. That really resolves a lot of problems in the future for many people. The report includes recommendations that the Advisory Committee agreed upon, and they list both the guiding principles and general approaches, and I mentioned some of them. Then they are subdivided into sections, same as the report itself. They include organization and planning recommendations, state housing policy, best practices, homelessness prevention, and each particular subgroup that I mentioned before. The main organizational recommendation is creating the Pennsylvania Interagency Council to End Homelessness. And this is something that if it does happen, that's in the hands of the governor's office. If it does happen, you will probably see the impact of it most of all. That would be obvious. That Pennsylvania Interagency Council to End Homelessness would function as an independent body and include executive-level participation and support from the governor's office, General Assembly, and all relevant Commonwealth departments, as well as local continuums of care and private sector. And it should guide the work to eliminate homelessness in Pennsylvania in general. I will probably not talk a lot about the other recommendations, partly because I have already addressed them, partly because there are too many. And I do want to leave time for questions and for your further discussion. But once again, the report is available online, so you can take a look at it. And if you have any questions specifically for the Joint State Government Commission, you can certainly email me or call me. Cindy has this information, and again, it is also listed in the report. Once you open it online, we'll be happy to give you any further information you may want. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you so much for all of the work that you and phenomenal job. And I also want to acknowledge the advisory committee chair. And now let me open the question.
I did want to thank you, Helen, for all. This is Joyce from. Is it all right if I go, Cindy?
Go right ahead.
I just wanted to thank Helen for the tremendous work that she's done over the last 2 years on putting this very comprehensive publication together. The Housing Alliance was thrilled and proud to be here at the inception and throughout the process. I did want to mention to the group that Cindy and I and Tor will be, the Housing Alliance is going to be planning Home Matters Day on June 15th, where we're going to bring the recommendations around the Interagency Council, a plan, a real statewide plan, and a point person to the governor and the legislature to make sure that this gets pushed and advocated for. So thank you again, Helen. She's getting on all of our calls to update folks on the importance of this and to sort of publicize all the great work. So thank you again, and we'll be getting out an invite on Home Matters Day shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do other folks have questions? Helen. Can people hear me?
Cindy? Can't hear Cindy, so I think I'm going to, do folks have questions? If not, I know we have Jeff Eisman on the phone. Jeff, do you want to bring up a couple issues?
Yeah, this is Jeff from Pennsylvania Silk. Some of you probably have already gotten this, but the governor's office has been talking about the housing plan for human services population. That announcement, it's been rescheduled once already. The current announcement is to be made Monday, May 23rd at 10 o'clock. It's supposed to be over at Shepherd's Crossing in Mechanicsburg. I can send that over. I don't know, Cindy or Joyce, have you seen that?
Yeah, I don't know if
I have not. If you can send it over, we can get it out to people.
Okay. That was one issue. And do we have any other updates? And I believe the bills have moved a little bit. I don't know if they've gotten floor votes on the two tenant bills on House Bill 975 and 1051.
I don't have any updates, but
Cindy, can you speak up? You sound like you're off in the distance.
Oh, okay. All right. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I figured out the problem. I don't have any updates. I saw wasn't one of them just scheduled. Sorry, I was out of the office for a couple of days. So, no, Jeff, do you want to describe those bills a little bit, and let me just check the status as we talk?
Yeah, the House Bill 975 is Representative Madeline Dean's bill from Montgomery County, and it would update the Landlord and Tenant Act of 51 and basically provide early protections against earlier terminations for folks that are with disabilities or seniors, particularly if somebody's winds up staying in a nursing home or other institution for a longer period of time, that they can get back to their place. There's some specific changes. Although the one question I got from folks I talked to at SDHP was a lot of times landlords will look at the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504, and they're usually willing to make allowances for folks that have these issues, but I'm just wondering, I guess you could say it's about a lot of other bills. This was probably a constituent issue for Representative Dean. So,
yeah, I don't know specifically what the impetus was behind the bill. I think it has been around for a couple of sessions.
Right.
Yeah, often it is a constituent issue. I know the Philadelphia Bar Association has been pushing it. So that bill 975 was reported out of committee in the House, first consideration, and okay. Hope people can still hear me. Sorry about all the problems we're having on this call. And so first consideration laid on the table, so not scheduled to move at the moment. And the other bill you mentioned, which deals with victims of domestic violence and granting them the ability to terminate a lease, that is scheduled for committee meeting today.
Okay.
I know that it was postponed from the meeting last month while they continued to work on some language.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is accurate, but it seemed like from talking to at least the Democrat committee staff, they seem to think that these bills actually had a chance to get out of the House this session. I'm not sure if that's the case, but there seemed to be an impression that any of the more controversial issues may be okay, and that there may not be other surprise amendments. But of course, even if that happens, the Senate may have other ideas.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeff, let's put this on the agenda for the June legislative briefing, and we'll get some more in-depth conversation. Hopefully they will have moved a little bit by then. Apparently somebody, I don't know, put their phone, didn't disconnect properly. I'm really sorry about all this noise. But Jeff, did you have something else that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, the ABLE accounts. In December 2014, Congress passed and the President signed the ABLE Act, which basically authorized their savings accounts for individuals with disabilities who acquired a disability prior to age 26. And as most folks that work in human services know, you have limits under Medicaid of $2,000 in the bank, things like that. Folks would be able to save these funds, and they wouldn't count basically toward most assistance programs, although we're still trying to figure that out in terms of housing. But the money in an ABLE account, it would be similar principle as what we do in Pennsylvania and other states with the 529 tuition assistance or TAP program, but this would be for folks with disabilities. And the monies in those accounts can be used for a number of issues, including housing. If someone with a disability wants to use that money for a ramp, maybe they're not able to tap into a Medicaid waiver program, they could use it for other expenses that aren't covered under publicly funded programs, things like that. It's potentially another place where folks want to maybe upgrade their homes or get a ramp or whatever they might need. You can have up to $14,000 a year, and I believe it's up to $100,000 over a 7-year period for this. So the Senate Bill 879 is now Act 17 this year. The governor signed that. So we think PA Treasury will be able to have the accounts up and running by the fall, probably October, November. If you want an able account in Pennsylvania right now, you could choose to go to another state that already has implemented able accounts and do that. But I guess from a Pennsylvania perspective, we would hope that folks would possibly wait and do their business in Pennsylvania. And I think Pennsylvania is also looking at the option for folks in other states that don't have those accounts where they could come here and make investments. So in terms of the appropriation, it looked like they were looking at about $1.5 million, although the governors seem to have a higher amount on what it would cost. But the hope is basically that these accounts would be self-sustaining after a few years based on the fees and things like that to fund the program.
Thanks. And if people want to if anybody's left on the phone, bear with me for a minute. Open meeting, because I'm figuring out how to use this. Meeting control. Where on earth is that? So I said, oh, here we go. Okay, that and.
Can I just add one thing, Cindy, while you're doing that? Jeff, we are in the group, whoever's on, we are going to do a webinar on the ABLE legislation and moving forward, so we'll get more information out. But isn't it true, too, Jeff, that people will be able to, like, save more money, like parents or relatives can, like, give them money?
Yes. Anybody could pretty much put funds into an ABLE account. There is legislation, House Bill 1319, where contributions could be tax deductible, but I'm going to say because of the potential cost impact of lost revenues to the Commonwealth, we're not sure if that's going to get out of the House. Right now, 1319 had passed the House, went over to the Senate. There was an amendment, and it's back in the House Rules Committee where it's sitting. So unless there's a decision made that we can get that bill is okay, right now folks who make contributions to an ABLE account for a friend, family member, whoever wouldn't get tax deductibility on that, but that is another piece of it. And there are a couple other federal pieces.
And that their disability wouldn't be affected, right? Isn't that the thing, too?
Correct. Their disability would not be affected. And again, this is only for folks who acquired a disability prior to age 26. So, and that can be any disability. It's not disability restrictive. It is age restrictive. And there are a couple other bills we can share on a future call that are in Congress now to address some other concerns. Basically, when ABLE was passed, some of the compromises made were to get it through. So, but that could be shared down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thanks very much. Jeff, anything else?
There was one other thing I just thought of. For folks that are involved in getting home modifications, or organizations work on getting home modifications for folks with disabilities and seniors, the Commonwealth did put out an RFP through the Department of General Services, and I know a number of organizations, some Centers for Independent Living and a few others, are making bids on that. So that is a change to the current home modification system, and they're basically doing it in regions. For folks that are familiar with the Health Choices program and also the soon-to-be coming Community Health Choices, it's being done through the 5 regions are the same that they have in Health Choices in Pennsylvania. So we'll see what the final product of that looks like, whether they go with one statewide home mods broker, or whether they have 5 different ones, or I think there's supposed to be choice for the folks doing home mods. I think there's supposed to be at least 2 brokers in each region, but we'll see how many organizations bid on it and what the final product is. But that
okay,
is,
so So we'll do some follow-up, and that might also be good for the agenda for the next call if the information is available by then. Definitely like to follow up on that.
Right, and all of this, and when I say all of this, I mean the governor's housing plan, the home mods, and the forthcoming managed long-term care community health choices are supposedly all tied together or supposed to flow together. So just because of the needs for housing for folks with physical disabilities of any age and things of that nature and the issues that they're aware of. So we'll see. Hopefully they all work well together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be very good, wouldn't it, if they all worked well together. So, and I know that is the emphasis of the housing strategy that will be released next week, I guess it is. Okay. And as we were talking, I got an email from Carrie Smith at Community Legal Services saying that according to an article in the Morning Call, that Senator Udicek is quoted as saying his, well, of course he's not calling it a payday lending bill, but short-term lending bill could be filed next month. And so I think we'll also have that on the call for next month. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to talk about before the line goes crazy again? Anyone else have any issues that they're seeing or anything they're working on that they'd like to share? Well, I thank you all for getting on. Do apologize for the technical difficulties, and really hope to talk with you all in June. Thank you.
Thank you.